The citadel did not believe in subtlety. It hovered above the crimson world like a declaration of intent, its war fleets aligned in disciplined silence beyond the viewport. Every corridor I had passed through hummed faintly with defensive systems that did not trust diplomacy. I tried to walk as though I had done this before, addressed a warrior empire inside its own armored palace, rather than as though I was mentally drafting my last will. She waited at the center of the chamber. Her battle armor did not merely cover her, it lived with her. The exoskeletal interface traced along her limbs and spine in seamless integration, faint neural conduits pulsing with controlled bioluminescent current. Lines of soft, shifting light traveled across its surface, mapping biochemical fluctuations before they could reach expression. The armor's collar framed her throat like a crown inverted, while crystalline filaments arced behind her head, responding subtly to ambient electromagnetic shifts. Her eyes, layered in metallic hues that shifted with angle, rested on me with disciplined composure. "Human envoy," she said, her voice resonating through both air and subtle subharmonic frequencies. "Show bravery and speak your heart." I blinked. "Is there a less terrifying option?" I asked. A faint pulse traveled through her armor, perhaps amusement, perhaps recalibration. "Bravery is the only option available." "I was hoping for mild honesty," I replied. "Maybe cautious sincerity." The chamber's ambient systems registered my voice print, translating emotional inflection for distant observers. I imagined half her empire listening. "Your species experiences emotion without structural containment," she continued. "You feel without filtration." "That's one way to describe it," I said. "We also panic without filtration, very versatile." Her gaze sharpened, not hostile but evaluative. "Our armor regulates emotional volatility. It suppresses involuntary attachment, mitigates fear responses, and enhances combat clarity. We do not allow internal chaos to dictate external policy." "Healthy boundaries," I murmured. "I support that." The faint light across her armor intensified briefly, tracing neural patterns along the exoskeleton's embedded circuitry. It was not simply protection, it was governance over her own biology. "You are aware," she said, "that emotional transparency in your species is considered a strategic liability." "Frequently," I admitted. "We also write poetry about it." A subtle shift passed through the chamber as sensor arrays adjusted to my rising cortisol levels. I exhaled slowly. "You asked me to speak my heart," I said. "Is this a diplomatic exercise or a psychological experiment?" "Yes," she answered, "that's not comforting." Her crystalline filaments tilted, catching unseen currents. "In my civilization," she continued, "armor is bonded at adolescence. It integrates with our nervous systems. Removal is irreversible exposure." I nodded cautiously. "So you're not suggesting we compare vulnerabilities casually?" She did not smile, but the armor's light shifted in a softer pattern. "I am suggesting," she said, "that peace cannot be negotiated solely through fleets. And you believe it can be negotiated through feelings, through courage." The word lingered. I studied her armor more closely now, not as a threat but as a barrier. It filtered everything: fear, attraction, doubt. Nothing reached the surface unmediated. "You think humans are brave," I said slowly, "because we don't have that." "I think," she replied, "you endure emotional exposure without structural defense. That's one way to phrase poor impulse control." A faint ripple passed through the chamber's neural monitoring field. Somewhere beyond the walls, analysts were likely parsing our conversation into tactical projections. "Speak honestly," she said again. The weight of it pressed heavier now, not romantic, not seductive, but political. If I faltered, it would not be personal embarrassment. It would be interpreted as species-level weakness. "You want honesty?" I asked quietly. "Yes." I swallowed. "I think," I said, choosing each word deliberately, "that armor keeps you safe, but it also keeps you alone." The chamber's hum deepened a fraction. Her armor's luminous lines paused, then resumed in slower rhythm. You risk offense, she observed. I was invited to. Silence expanded between us, not hostile but charged. For generations, she said, we have survived through containment. And for generations, I replied, we've survived through exposure, not because it's efficient, because it's inevitable. Her gaze did not waver. The war fleets outside remained motionless, patient, lethal. Show bravery, she repeated. I held her eyes, aware that whatever came next would echo far beyond this room. I already am, I said. The chamber did not erupt into chaos when I said it. No alarms, no weapons charging. Just a subtle recalibration in the air, as if the citadel itself had leaned in to listen. You believe containment equates to isolation, she said. I believe, I replied carefully, that filtering everything makes it difficult for anyone to reach you. Her armor pulsed faintly, neural conduits brightening along her spine. I could almost feel the interface regulating her internal chemistry, smoothing spikes, suppressing fluctuation. You assume we desire to be reached, she said. That's fair, I admitted. Most of us do, even when we pretend we don't. A low hum rippled across the chamber. External sensor feeds were likely being cross-referenced with behavioral analytics. I imagined distant strategists debating whether emotional philosophy constituted a hostile maneuver. You speak of vulnerability as strength, she continued. Sometimes it's just unavoidable, I said. We feel first. We analyze later, often poorly. That is inefficient. Deeply, I agreed, but occasionally effective. Her crystalline filaments adjusted subtly, catching the electromagnetic currents from the citadel's defensive grid. The armor's surface light traced along her collar, then dimmed. You misunderstand our integration, she said. The armor does not erase emotion, it regulates expression. So it's not suppression, I said, it's moderation. Yes. That sounds healthier than I expected. She studied me for a moment, the metallic hues in her eyes shifting as internal diagnostics processed my biometric signals. You exhibit elevated stress responses, she observed. I am standing inside a war citadel explaining feelings to a warrior princess, I replied. Elevated stress feels appropriate. A brief modulation in her armor's pulse suggested something close to restrained amusement. Your humor persists under threat, she noted. It's either that or faint, I said. Silence settled again, but this time it felt less like tension and more like anticipation. You believe emotional exposure builds trust, she said. I believe hiding everything guarantees distance. Her armor brightened slightly, neural threads mapping micro-fluctuations in her hormonal system. I wondered what it felt like to have every reaction pre-processed, smoothed into acceptable form. You asked me to speak my heart, I said, so here's another piece of it. She did not interrupt. I don't think your people fear weakness, I continued. I think you fear unpredictability. A faint tremor moved through the chamber floor, external fleet repositioning perhaps. Unpredictability leads to instability, she said evenly. Sometimes, I replied. Sometimes it leads to connection. Her luminous conduits paused for half a heartbeat. Explain. You regulate attachment, I said. You suppress fear, you optimize clarity. But clarity without risk isn't courage, it's control. The armor's light shifted into tighter patterns, processing. You imply our courage is artificial. I'm implying it's assisted, I said. There's a difference. A low-frequency vibration passed through the citadel's structure. Somewhere beyond the chamber, warships recalibrated orbital positions. The Empire was watching. You ask us to remove safeguards, she said. I'm asking whether safeguards prevent evolution. Her gaze sharpened. Evolution through instability, she said. Evolution through exposure, I corrected. The chamber's translation field adjusted to the slight shift in tone between us. You would have us abandon centuries of integration, she said. I would have you question whether integration became insulation. Silence stretched. Then she took one step closer. The armor's neural threads brightened along her shoulders, then dimmed. You presume much, she said softly. I was invited to speak honestly, I replied. Her crystalline filaments trembled faintly, not from external currents but internal fluctuation. Our armor bonds in adolescence, she said. It becomes part of us. Humans bond to things too, I said. Beliefs, defenses, old wounds, we call them identity. And do you remove them easily? Not even slightly. A faint pulse of light traveled across her exoskeleton, slower now. You believe, she said, that removing protection is strength. I believe choosing to remove it is. The chamber grew still. Beyond the viewport, the war fleets held formation. You understand, she said quietly, that removal is not symbolic. I assumed nothing about this was symbolic. Her armor emitted a subtle tonal shift, almost like a breath drawn through circuitry. If I disengage the interface, she said, my emotional state will no longer be regulated. That sounds significant. It will be detected across the empire. Also significant. And you, she continued, will witness me without filtration. I swallowed. That was not part of my travel briefing, I said. Her luminous conduits flickered once more, then steadied. You asked whether armor creates isolation, she said. Yes. Prepare to test your hypothesis. The chamber's ambient systems recalibrated as she lifted her hand toward the neural seals along her collar. For the first time since I entered the citadel, I felt something far more dangerous than fear. Anticipation. The chamber sealed itself without dramatic noise, which somehow made it more serious. External feeds dimmed. Observation channels narrowed. Somewhere beyond the walls, analysts were undoubtedly recalculating probabilities and updating contingency protocols. Inside, the air felt denser, not because it had changed, but because I understood what she was about to do. You may reconsider, I said. I will not, she replied. Her hand rested against the neural seal at her collar. The armor's luminous conduits brightened in cascading sequence, like a city grid preparing for shutdown. This is not theater, she said. Once disengaged, the interface cannot resume full suppression without ceremony. That sounds inconvenient for scheduling, I murmured. Her crystalline filaments trembled faintly, picking up internal electromagnetic shifts rather than ambient ones now. You requested courage, she said. I suggested it, I corrected quickly. There's a difference between suggestion and empire-wide biological rebellion. The first seal disengaged with a soft, almost organic sound. The armor's pulse faltered. Across the chamber, a low alert tone flickered and then silenced itself, overridden manually. Sensor arrays are registering deviation, she said evenly. My neural signature is destabilizing. Good destabilizing or catastrophic destabilizing? I asked. That distinction remains undetermined. Another segment of the exoskeletal interface retracted, revealing smooth, luminous skin beneath, patterned with faint geometric currents that brightened unpredictably as the suppression field weakened. I felt it before I understood it, a subtle shift in the air, not physical, not visible, something deeper, as if a frequency I had never consciously perceived had just been unmuted. Her breathing changed. It was no longer measured by algorithm. It was uneven, alive. The final neural lock released. The armor did not fall away dramatically. It receded, folding back along her frame in silent compliance. The living interface dimmed, its regulatory lights extinguishing one by one until only faint residual currents remained. She stood unshielded. The change was immediate. The luminous patterns beneath her skin flared brighter, then softened, then flared again, no longer constrained to steady rhythm. The crystalline filaments behind her head trembled in erratic arcs. Her eyes, no longer filtered through suppression algorithms, shifted with raw intensity. Across the empire, I imagined alarms lighting up. You are detecting my emotional state directly, she said quietly. Yes, I admitted. It wasn't telepathy. It wasn't sound. It was resonance. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then something inside me responded. Heat surged along my spine, subtle at first, my pulse synchronized with an unfamiliar rhythm. A faint tingling spread through my hands, not painful, electric. She inhaled sharply. "You feel that?" she said. "I do." Her gaze locked onto mine, not disciplined now but searching. "The armor was dampening harmonic interaction," she murmured. "Harmonic interaction sounds less alarming than what I'm experiencing." "What are you experiencing?" I hesitated. "Awareness," I said finally. "Like I've been listening to static my whole life, and someone just tuned the signal." Her luminous patterns intensified, reacting to proximity. Across the chamber, dormant sensor arrays reactivated without command, detecting unfamiliar energy harmonics between us. "This was not anticipated," she said. "I'm sensing that," I replied. A sudden pulse rippled outward, not explosive, not destructive, but expansive. The chamber's ambient systems flickered briefly as if adjusting to a new baseline. Her filaments flared, then steadied. "Our genetic fields are interacting," she whispered. "That's not something I was warned about in diplomatic briefings." "Your species carries dormant markers," she said. "Resonant sequences." "Dormant as in harmless. Dormant as in waiting." A laugh escaped me despite everything. "This is escalating rapidly." Her breathing remained uneven, unfiltered emotion radiating without technological moderation. "For centuries," she said, "our armor has regulated not only fear but attachment." "And now?" I asked. "Now," she replied, voice softer, "I feel it unmediated." The word hung between us: attachment. The resonance intensified, not overwhelming but undeniable. My heartbeat adjusted to match the subtle fluctuations in her luminous patterns. The space between us felt charged, not with danger, but with recognition. "You think our species share ancestry," I said quietly. "I no longer think," she replied. "I perceive." Across the empire, neural monitoring systems would be registering the absence of her suppression signature and the emergence of something new. "You realize," I said, "that somewhere out there a war council is panicking." "Yes." "Excellent," I murmured. "Nothing like interspecies biochemical synchronization to calm political tensions." Despite the gravity of the moment, a faint, almost fragile smile touched her voice. "You are not retreating," she observed. "I suggested courage," I replied. "I should probably participate." The luminous currents beneath her skin steadied gradually, aligning with the rhythm echoing through me. For the first time since entering the citadel, I did not feel like an envoy negotiating terms. I felt like part of something awakening, and the armor, dim, folded, silent, no longer defined the strongest presence in the room. She did. The Empire did not strike. That in itself felt miraculous. No warships altered formation. No weapons powered to lethal capacity. The citadel remained steady in orbit, though I could almost imagine the councils arguing in frantic silence across distant command chambers. Their princess stood without armor. Their neural monitors were detecting a signature they had never catalogued, and I was still alive. The resonance between us did not spiral out of control. It stabilized. Her breathing evened gradually, not through algorithm, not through suppression, but through adjustment. The luminous currents beneath her skin aligned into a calmer rhythm, and my own pulse followed without conscious effort. "You are not overwhelmed," she said softly. "I thought I would be," I admitted. "Turns out panic isn't mandatory. That is growth." A few hours earlier, I would have laughed at the idea that I had grown in the middle of a militarized citadel. Yet something fundamental had shifted. I no longer felt like a negotiator attempting to avoid conflict. I felt like a participant in something far more delicate. "Your empire is observing," I said. "Yes." "And you are still unshielded." "Yes." "That seems strategically reckless." "It is strategically unprecedented," she corrected. The faint glow from her folded armor remained dim at the edge of the chamber, inert without her neural integration. It no longer looked like protection. It looked like a relic. "You removed more than technology," I said quietly. "You removed fear." "I removed filtration," she replied. "Fear remains. It is simply honest." That word struck deeper than expected. Honest. In my species, honesty was rarely described as strength. It was risky, inconvenient, occasionally catastrophic. But here, standing unshielded in the heart of a warrior empire, honesty felt like the most disciplined act imaginable. You feared unpredictability, I said. Yes. And I feared being insignificant in this room. Her gaze met mine directly. No dampening field, no mediated response. You are not insignificant. The resonance intensified briefly at her words, not explosive, not destabilizing, but affirming. Somewhere beyond the chamber, the Empire's monitoring systems would be registering that harmonic alignment had not triggered collapse. It had triggered coherence. You know what this means, I said. Yes. You can't simply return to armor as if nothing happened. No, and your empire cannot ignore this. No, I exhaled slowly. For generations, I continued, you've believed strength meant containment. And your species believes strength means exposure, she said. Not always, I admitted. We often confuse exposure with chaos. And yet, she said, you remained. I nodded. I had. Not because I was fearless. Not because I understood the genetic resonance or the dormant markers awakening within me. I remained because retreat would have meant reinforcing the very isolation we were trying to dismantle. You asked me to show bravery, I said. Yes. I thought that meant speaking honestly. It did, but it also meant staying. She stepped closer, not to dominate, not to test, but simply to share proximity without interference. The luminous currents between us held steady, a quiet bridge rather than a volatile surge. Our armor suppressed attachment, she said. It was designed to ensure command clarity. And now, I asked, now I must learn clarity without suppression. I smiled faintly. Humans specialize in that with mixed results. A soft modulation in her voice suggested genuine amusement this time. Across the citadel, the ambient hum shifted. External fleets remained motionless, but internal signals adjusted. Data streams recalibrated. The Empire was not preparing for war. It was recalculating identity. You have altered more than my neural signature, she said. I hope in a positive direction, I replied. You have demonstrated that vulnerability does not equal collapse. And you've demonstrated that armor isn't the only form of discipline. The resonance between us settled into something sustainable, not overwhelming, not intoxicating but steady. It felt less like ignition and more like foundation. Peace will not be declared today, she said. I wasn't expecting fireworks, but a precedent has been established.